Me. We have an important update tonight. Back in November, I had on my podcast a very important guest, Stephen Donziger. I had heard about his case. He was a lawyer. He is an environmental lawyer. And back in 1993, he got wind, along with some other environmental activists and lawyers, of a terrible, terrible case happening down in Ecuador, where the then oil company Texaco was dumping terrible toxic waste having to do with their drilling procedures down in the Amazon. And it was doing terrible damage to the water, to the bodies of the people, to the land of the indigenous tribes down there. And Stephen Donziger became the lead figure in a case in which on behalf of these 30,000 farmers and indigenous people in Ecuador, they sued the oil company, which by that point had been taken over by Chevron. What has occurred since then is a case of such corporate tyranny, is a case where at this point, Stephen Donziger has been called America's first corporate political prisoner. I want to read to you his own words, and then I want to bring Stephen on. Since I first had him on in November, I'm very happy to say, if there's some good news and the bad news, his case has become very well known. And most of you probably at this point, if not all of you, know who Stephen Donziger is. But tonight he'll be telling you the story, what he has gone through, what he is going through, and most importantly, give you an update on the trial that is about to occur. These are the words from Stephen. In 1993, I got involved in a case in April of 93 when I was invited to join a delegation of lawyers and scientists to investigate what we had been told was the world's worst oil-related catastrophe in an area of the Ecuadorian Amazon just south of the Colombia border. So he says, I went there, I discovered what was really an apocalyptic scene. Huge Olympic-sized pools of oil that had been left in the jungle. Hundreds and hundreds of these open-air toxic waste pits that Chevron had built to dispose of waste. They would put pipes into the sides of these pits so that they could easily run the cancer-causing contents into nearby rivers and streams that the local indigenous peoples and other rural farming communities relied on for their drinking water and for bathing and fishing. It was very clear that this was deliberately designed to lower production costs by polluting. So the catastrophe that we witnessed was really disturbing on a number of levels. But I think the thing that maybe most disturbed me was that it was designed to do this. It wasn't an accident. Over time, experts began to call this the Amazon Chernobyl. And I think that by any objective metric, it's probably the worst oil-related contamination on Earth. Chevron owns it. They're refusing to take responsibility for it, and they're refusing to pay the people they harmed compensation for the damage, even though that has been ordered by multiple courts. So I got involved in 1993 and then became part of a team that pursued a legal case which culminated in a successful outcome for the people of Ecuador in 2011, when the Ecuadorian court ruled that Chevron was liable and owed $9.5 billion to the affected communities for cleanup. They have not paid a dollar and have since been pursuing an attack strategy against me and other lawyers designed to help them evade complying with the law. What you're going to hear from Stephen tonight is the extent to which Chevron has gone to smear him and basically to ruin his life, his career and his life, because he has been under house arrest for over 600 days, wearing an ankle bracelet, and all for a misdemeanor. And this is significant, not just for Stephen. This is relevant not just for his life. This is relevant for all of our lives because it is intended to have a chilling effect on any environmental lawyer, on any environmental activist, on basically anybody who claims that they can tell Chevron and its ilk what they can do. And Chevron has said that it will pay any price. They have hundreds of billions of dollars, and they have said that they will fight this until hell freezes over, even though, as you just heard from Stephen's own words, they don't even deny that it happened. This is an important story for Stephen, for the earth, for the people in the Amazon, for the Ecuadorians, and for our democracy. Please join with me in welcoming in your heart, Stephen Donziger. Stephen, hi, come join me. So nice to see you. I need you to unmute your screen.
Okay. Thank you,
Hi.
Marianne. It's good to see you.
Always good to see you, and my best wishes to your family. I know that this experience has just been devastating for you on the level of your family. I know you have a son. Tell us what it's like to be under house arrest for over 600 days with an ankle bracelet. What can you tell us about this personal experience that you want us all to know?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. You know, being on house arrest obviously is not fun. Your life gets really narrowed and shrunk physically. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. Prior to this situation, I traveled extensively throughout the United States and really the world, Europe, Latin America, building support for this case, raising money and dealing with legal issues. And, I don't think it's any coincidence that I'm being prosecuted by Chevron, by a Chevron law firm, not by the government. I'm the only person in America in the federal system charged with a misdemeanor who's being held pre-trial even for a day. It's been over 600 days. I've already served at home 7 times longer than the maximum sentence ever imposed on a lawyer for the so-called crime, and I believe I'm innocent, for which I've been charged. I have not even had a trial. So this is highly irregular. It's never happened before. I don't think it's a coincidence that it is being set up by Chevron and its law firms to happen. So, I get the big picture, and I'm strong, resilient, hopeful, and believe that we will get through this. And of course, I think constantly about my clients in Ecuador, people I've known now for 25 plus years. I've been to Ecuador over 250 times from Manhattan to deal with the case and to work on it over the years, over 20 plus years. And they've been deprived of their main lawyer. Now, I will say this, the case goes on with or without me. There are other lawyers working on enforcing the Ecuador judgment against Chevron's assets, but obviously the two things are connected. I mean, Chevron has calculated that if they can keep me confined, they can somehow evade paying the indigenous peoples and rural communities in Ecuador who continue to suffer and die of cancers and other oil-related diseases. So there's some serious stuff going on, as you point out in your introduction. There's people dying in Ecuador. There's indigenous groups facing literally extinction because of Chevron's pollution and failure to pay this judgment. And then here, they're trying to make an example of me to, I think, implement a new corporate playbook that they plan to use. When I say they, I mean the fossil fuel industry writ large, against activists, lawyers, and others who successfully hold them accountable, as we have done in the case of Ecuador. So there's a lot at stake here, and I just would ask that people pay attention. We obviously need support on a personal level. We've gotten a lot of support, a lot of solidarity from you and others and journalists and podcasters and 55 Nobel laureates. And without that, I don't think we would be as strong as we are. So that's just critical. But we face a lot of challenges, and we're confident with enough support we can get through it successfully.
So the judgment was in 2011, and that was where the Ecuadorian government said that ultimately, after the original judgment of, I think, 18 billion was reduced, 9-point-something billion Chevron had to pay. You must have been ecstatic. You guys have been a huge success. And then what happened?
Well, the judgment came down on Valentine's Day, 2011. Chevron knew it was losing the case. I mean, the evidence against it was overwhelming. I mean, they don't even deny they did this. Their whole...
I want to point out here what I've heard you say before, which is that these open pits that spewed these cancer-causing agents into the water, into the land, and so forth, that this was not even the minimum standard for anything that would even be allowed in the United States. And we know that our standards are too low in the United States. This was just blatant disregard for the health and well-being of the people. Yes. And of the river. Okay.
Also violated standards in Ecuador, as lax as they were. I mean, it was just off the charts. I mean, it was like this was Texaco that did this. Chevron later bought Texaco, so we call it Chevron. But, the engineers went in there and just decided to save $3 a barrel they were just going to dump all this stuff into the pristine Amazon ecosystem that is the lungs of the planet. I mean, it's not just what the indigenous groups there depend on for their survival, not just survival, for their prosperity. I mean, these are groups of people that have lived for millennia very healthily and well, and they didn't even have a word for cancer in their native vocabularies until oil came. And the Texaco engineers, when they would complain, would say, "Oh, no, it's fine. Oil is like milk. It has vitamins." That's what they would tell the indigenous people. And the level of abuse was sickening to hear these stories from the people we met on that first trip in April of 1993. It's like we couldn't turn our backs to it. So yeah, the real sad part is, the Ecuadorians sued Chevron in the United States in New York in 1993. It was Chevron that fought for 10 years to move the case to Ecuador. And those were the courts that were more suited to hear this kind of thing.
They could buy them off, et cetera.
Exactly. They thought they could just engineer a dismissal. The Ecuadorians got reorganized with a legal team backed by other American lawyers like myself and relaunched the same case in Ecuador in 2003. And it took 8 years, but they ended up winning, with the help of me and others, winning this historic judgment. Chevron tried to sabotage the case every step of the way. They threatened judges with jail time, that kind of stuff. But they ended up...
Even though they said, whatever the judgment is from the Ecuadorian court, we will pay.
They did promise to pay any adverse judgment as a condition of the case being moved out of the United States to Ecuador. So what happened is, as it became more and more clear that the Ecuadorians were going to win the case, just look at the evidence. There were 64,000 chemical sampling results submitted as evidence that pointed to their pollution, their violations of standards. They decided to attack me in 2009, a couple of years before they really attacked me in earnest. There was an internal company email that said our defense strategy is to demonize Donziger. That was their new strategy. And, around the same time the Ecuadorians won the judgment on Valentine's Day 2011, literally a few days before that, Chevron, via its U.S. law firm Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, filed a racketeering case against me on the theory that this entire project, from all the 18 years that we had worked on this, was some sort of extortion attempt against Chevron. And it was a classic corporate maneuver, right? It was designed to flip the narrative. And basically, Chevron attempted to blame the very people it had poisoned for decades for a lawsuit against them, for the fact they lost this lawsuit. And of course, they chose me because I live in New York, and they came back to the same courts that previously they wouldn't do the case in, and sued me under civil RICO. To make a long story short, I was denied a jury. The judge was a tobacco industry lawyer. They paid a witness a massive sum of money, coached him 53 days. He came into court, claimed he was in a meeting with me where I offered a bribe. Totally false, no corroborating evidence. The witness later admitted he had lied repeatedly before Judge Kaplan, but Judge Kaplan credited him anyway, and he ruled. I mean, this ruling has very little meaning because the Ecuadorian courts actually ruled the case as valid, as affirmed by Ecuador Supreme Court and Canada Supreme Court. But you have this one U.S. trial judge here in New York where I live who ruled based on this false evidence that a fraud had been committed in Ecuador. And it just isn't true. And again, 28 other judges in Ecuador and Canada have found the opposite.
Okay, now hold on. I want everybody to know that this judge, Judge Kaplan, is a member of the Federalist Society, and that Chevron is one of the main donors of the Federalist Society. Okay.
Not only that, that's, Judge Kaplan, judges have to release financial disclosure forms. And for years, he's had investments in oil and gas, and in a mutual fund that actually has a direct investment in Chevron, something he never disclosed during this trial a few years ago. And he, when we started to make progress in Canada to seize Chevron's assets, we got a unanimous Supreme Court decision in our favor in 2015. And then Chevron went back to Judge Kaplan to go after me here in New York. They got him to impose millions of dollars of cost orders on me. So forcing me, a human rights lawyer living in a small apartment, to pay the legal fees of an oil company. They literally used hundreds of lawyers.
Good luck on collecting that, huh, Stephen?
So they wiped me out financially for the most part. And when that didn't work, he upped the ante and charged me with criminal contempt when I wouldn't turn over my computer and cell phone, which contains confidential client information, to Chevron. I appealed it instead of turning it over. And while it was pending appeal, he had me arrested and locked up. It's never happened before in America. And I'm a lawyer. I was doing my job. So it's really disturbing, Marianne, on a lot of levels.
Okay, so the prosecutors in New York looked at the case and they said, we're not going to prosecute this guy. And then something happened, which I know I have felt and other people have felt as well, just absolutely shocked, because we didn't even know that this could happen in America. The prosecutor in New York looked at the case, said, no, we're not going to go there. And so Judge Kaplan was able to hire a private prosecutor. Explain that to us.
I didn't know this could happen in the United States of America until it happened. But when a judge, in our system of separation of powers in America, judges don't charge crimes.
Right.
Executive branch, through prosecutors, charge crimes. Judges oversee the legal side.
Right.
There is one exception, that is when a judge decides a lawyer practicing before him or her is somehow violating his or her orders, they can charge you directly. But at that point, they have to recuse themselves from the case, take it to an independent prosecutor. And when Judge Kaplan took it to the independent prosecutor in New York, known famously here in the United States as the SDNY, probably the most prestigious prosecutorial office in our country, they turned down the case. They declined to prosecute. And I think for good reason. I think the charges, frankly, are baseless. I mean, no one's ever been charged criminally for what I did, which is basically dispute a discovery order that Kaplan imposed against me. So when that office turned down the case, Judge Kaplan then invoked this little known rule to appoint a private prosecutor. But this is where it went afoul, in my view. There's probably 1,000 former prosecutors working in Manhattan, any one of which Judge Kaplan could have appropriately appointed. Instead, he appoints Rita Glavin, who works for a law firm called Seward and Kissel, who has none other than Chevron as a client.
How can this be legal?
And has extensive ties to the oil and gas industry. For example, one of their Seward and Kissel's biggest clients is a company called Oak Tree Capital. It's a $120 billion equity fund that finances deals in oil and gas. 2 of their executives have served on Chevron's board of directors. So the ties between this law firm and Chevron are tight, and they're financial. So my prosecutor works for Chevron, essentially. And that's why we call it the nation's first corporate criminal prosecution. I'm being prosecuted by a Chevron law firm. That is, I'm being prosecuted by Chevron. And only when you understand that does it make logical sense that I'm the only person in America locked up for a misdemeanor. Because if the professional prosecutor had taken the case, I never would have been locked up. And it would have been over by now, I'm convinced. They would have dismissed the case. I mean, they turned it down. So I think this is all extremely concerning. I mean, it's not just concerning, it's frightening.
Because this is really corporations telling us, it's corporations using the judiciary to do its will. We already know how corporations use the legislative branch of the U.S. government. We know how they use the White House in certain circumstances, and now they're using the judiciary, which we're already worried about with the Supreme Court. But this is so blatant and obvious, and as I said before you even came on, it's intended to have a very chilling effect on environmental lawyers, on environmental activists, and basically on any of us who dare complain, correct?
That's exactly right. I mean, this is about weaponizing the law to chill free speech, to chill advocacy against an industry. I mean, let's go a step further. That's destroying the planet. I mean, this is the fossil fuel industry. I mean, what Chevron did in Ecuador has happened in many countries through Chevron, Exxon, and other large oil companies. And they don't want human rights lawyers and indigenous leaders, that is, people who had enough trust in me to hire me to serve their needs as a lawyer, to do this kind of work effectively. And, I was able, and I think this is one thing that, frankly, I think terrifies Chevron. I was able to bring together leaders at the community level in the Amazon with top level legal talent in the capital of Ecuador and in New York and in Toronto and in London and in Rio and in Buenos Aires, okay, where a lot of actions have taken place around this case. I mean, top level lawyers, leading litigators, people who take on the biggest cases. Alan Lentzner in Canada, Jim Tyrell from Patton Boggs in the United States, all sorts of top level lawyers. And they can't handle it. And the other thing we did is we figured out how to finance the case through third parties. That is, we were able to get people to donate money to fund this litigation, this historic litigation, in exchange for getting a recovery upon a collection. Okay, in other words, we really harness capitalism in service of human rights. And I think that that's the last mile of the human rights struggle, is to figure out how to get financing for people who have no money so they can bring their legal claims successfully.
Well, and that's the same.
We designed a system to do that that was very successful, remains successful to some degree. And that's what's made this case viable for 27 years. I think Chevron kept thinking we go away. They have all the money. They would outlast us. I mean, they've spent at least $3 billion on legal fees. Billion. I mean, they could have cleaned up 50% of the problem if they
could have fixed it by now. They totally could have fixed it. So yeah. I want to use this as an opportunity to remind all of you that you too can help with the extraordinary costs involved in defending Stephen in this case. And as we said, defending our democracy, defending our planet, defending the environmental movement. And that's by going to donzigerdefense.com. That's DONZIGER defense.com. And I hope that you too will contribute, do what you can to help this case moving forward. Now, I follow you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
It's at @Donziger.
And you talk quite a bit on there about it being a virtual trial, about it being televised, about it being having a jury, not having a jury. What's happening? The trial is on May 10th now. Where's everything with this right now?
Well, it's a trial in name only. I want to emphasize that. It's not going to be a fair trial the way it's currently structured. I have no jury. And the judge is also a member of the Federalist Society, to which Chevron is a major donor. She's denied every effort by me to get off home detention. She's obviously prejudged the case without hearing any evidence. And she's made it clear she doesn't like me. Her name is Loretta Prescott. We've called for her to step down from the case on multiple occasions.
So wait, I'm confused. So yeah. It's not Judge Kaplan at this point?
No, so let me explain. Sorry, I need to make that clear. I essentially have two judges on this case. Judge Kaplan charged me, and then he appointed another judge to sort of be out front. And he's like working with her behind the scenes. I believe he helps her write her opinions. They talk all the time. Judge Kaplan never recused himself, which I, again, think is a major violation of the Constitution. Like, judges can't charge a crime and then be the judge. So I essentially have Judge Kaplan as the judge, the jury, and the fact finder.
And they're the ones who get to determine whether or not it's a jury?
Okay, he's the judge, the prosecutor, and the jury in the same case, one person.
But wouldn't you have preferred, of course, to have a jury of your peers?
Of course. I mean, I demand.
And they got to decide that there will be no jury?
There's no jury, even though it's 6 months.
And the judge got to decide that?
The judge got to decide that by limiting my maximum term to less than 6 months, 6 months or less in prison. You're allowed not to give a criminal, someone accused of a crime, a jury, even though they face prison. You know, that's sort of evolved over time. I think it's questionable from a legal standpoint, but in this particular case where I'm a lawyer and, I'm already been deprived of my liberty for almost 2 years, it's outrageous not to give me a jury of my peers. But it also, in my view, is evidence that they don't have any confidence in their own case. I mean, if they can't orchestrate and engineer the result, just like Judge Kaplan did in the racketeering case that led to this with no jury, then they don't want to have a trial. So this is all to them a big kind of, I think it's a show trial.
It is, that's what I was just going to say, it's a show trial.
It's a kangaroo court, in my opinion. But let me say this, I have great lawyers, Marty Garbus and Ron Kuby, among others, and we're going in there, we're going to fight like hell, okay? and we are going to put our defenses up, and we're appealing to the court of public opinion. Like, we want people to bear witness to this trial, attend this trial, and
How can
watch.
they attend? Wait, is it going to be
You be the
online?
judge of who's right and who's wrong. That's what we're asking people to do.
Okay, now hold on. First of all, I want everybody to understand. As Stephen was just emphasizing, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of people have learned about this now. You have a lot of law students who will refuse to be interviewed by the law firms that have anything to do with this. We don't want to have anything to do with you if you would prosecute and help the people who are prosecuting Stephen Donziger. 55 Nobel Prize winners have written letters. More and more people, more and more celebrities. The buzz is definitely building and has been building, but we need your help. First of all, not only with the defenses, as in DonzigerDefense.com, but also if you go to freedonziger.org, freedonziger.org, you will learn the different ways that you can help to create the energy. Now tell us about, it's on May 10th, right? And we can all attend.
In Manhattan at 500 Pearl Street. A couple points though.
But nobody can attend in person, right? I mean,
no, you can attend in person, but it's unclear because she's
COVID.
trying to limit access, and there's COVID restrictions in the court. There's not a lot of space in the courtroom, but there's going to be an overflow room. Look, what's crazy is Judge Preska, my Federalist Society judge, has terminated Zoom access to my trial.
Well, that's what I was. I thought
they don't want people to see this.
It really is like the stuff. We are living at a time when almost every day something happened, and you go, I thought that couldn't happen in America. Everything you're describing, like I was raised to believe that couldn't happen in America.
Now, one thing we're doing that's very important that people can help with.
Yeah.
My lawyers are asking Merrick Garland, that is the new Biden administration Attorney
General,
to review this case and take it out of the hands of the private Chevron prosecutor. Take it back and handle it professionally. Okay, we are begging the Department of Justice to intervene. This isn't a legal prosecution. You cannot have a corporation, a private corporation, prosecute an individual in the United States of America. This is the first time. It cannot happen.
Okay, so how can we support that? Do we all write?
I think everyone needs to call Merrick Garland.
Okay.
But let me say this. There's a
phone
petition, there's a petition on freedonziger.org.
Okay.
You should do that. And just call Merrick Garland's office and say, look at the Donziger case and take it back from the Chevron prosecutor.
Okay, everybody, let's be very clear what you're going to do to help. You're going to go to freedonziger.org. You're going to sign a petition, and it's going to give you a phone number where there will be a machine. I doubt that some person's gonna say, okay, tell me how you feel.
Might get the main number of the Department of Justice, but say it.
Department of Justice, whatever. And the Attorney General of the United States, the new Attorney General, of course, is Merrick Garland. And your request is that the Department of Justice take this case back into the to the U.S. judiciary, basically, away from this private prosecution. Correct, Stephen? Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. It's not right. I mean, it's not right. It's not right. It shouldn't happen ever and should never happen again. The Department of Justice needs to step up, protect our judicial system, the integrity of our judicial system from corporate control from an oil company that has been able to prosecute in the name of the people, its main critic. And you know what, another thing that's utterly infuriating? This private Chevron law firm has billed taxpayers over $500,000 to prosecute me on a misdemeanor that the U.S. Attorney's Office refused to prosecute.
Wait, where does that go? How are they charging?
We're trying to figure it out. They won't tell us. There's some slush fund or some budget in the court for this, but I mean, they're going to end up.
It's like a subsidy. We subsidize oil companies for ruining the careers of private citizens.
Exactly. I mean, this is another government subsidy of big oil that we know this. You know, we know this happens.
Just in case anybody bothers you, boys, we'll be there to back you up. That's how corrupt it's all become. Okay, so Stephen, the actual crime is a misdemeanor, and it has to do with not turning over your computer?
And cell phone.
And you're saying you have not turned over your computer and your cell phone because you're their lawyer. Lawyers have confidential information with their clients. You don't have to give that over.
Let me be clear about my position on that.
Okay.
When a judge issues an order, even if it's wrong, as a lawyer, you're obligated to comply. And I have
Court order.
complied with order after order from Judge Kaplan for years and years and years. I've never missed a court date. I've always been respectful. I am a rule of law person. Okay.
Okay.
This particular order, though, was so egregious in terms of violating the rights of my clients, and Chevron getting confidential information about our legal plans, about their names, locations, identities.
Right.
We've had death
Right.
threats. We've had death threats. People could be killed.
Right.
And I've never heard, nor has any other lawyer I've talked to, that in the middle of a litigation, a judge orders a lawyer to just turn over his case file to his adversary counsel. That goes against everything this country stands for and any civilized rule of law country stands for. So I didn't say I would never do it. I simply said, Judge Kaplan, please hold me in civil contempt so I can appeal this order and let the appellate court decide whether it's lawful or not, which is exactly what I did. And by the way, I ended up winning my appeal on this point, but during the pendency of the appeal, and the appeal lasted about 1.5 years, is when he charged me with criminal contempt for failing to comply with an order, the lawfulness of which I was challenging on appeal. I mean, it's crazy. It's never happened before. So I believe I'm well within my rights, and I did the ethical thing to protect my client's interests in this very complicated situation. Any other judge lets the lawyer do this without charging them criminally. There's no precedent for this, but he charged me criminally, and they use it as a pretext to put me under house arrest, which again was completely unjustified. By the way, his theory that I was a risk of flight. I was going to run away from the United States, even though they also took my passport, and I've never missed a court date, never, it's just not the way I roll. And I have a family here too. I would not leave. So it was all just a pretext to lock me up.
We know the prosecutor doesn't like you and is connected to Chevron.
Yeah.
We know the judge doesn't like you and is connected to Chevron. The good news is they know that we're all watching.
Yeah.
That's good. The court of public opinion. That's why I hope all of you will do your part. That's really what the cultural change in the United States today is about, the political change, the economic change. It's about all of us doing our part. And none of us underestimating what one person can do, what one phone call can do, what $1 can do, what one $5 donation can do. Once again, please, DonzigerDefense.com, and also go now to freedonziger.org and see how you can take part in this wave of energy. What's the worst that could happen, Stephen? What's the maximum that you could be sentenced with this crime?
6 months.
6 months?
But I mean, you never know with these people. They come up with stuff all the time. That's why it's so important. People need to step up and speak out. And I just want to say one other thing. This is a difficult day in America. I mean, the jury is out in the trial of the police officer who killed George Floyd. And people are dying all over the place. And I want to acknowledge that our criminal justice system has a lot of serious problems. And there are a lot of people far worse off than me in my current situation in this country, mostly people of color. And I just want to acknowledge that. Okay. That upsets me greatly. I do think, though, what's happening to me is a different type of thing that's never happened before. And I think it goes to control of our society by corporations, particularly by big oil, in a time of planetary destruction and existential challenges to our very survival. And the industry wants to wring every last dollar it can out of this destructive framework of oil exploitation, and not be bothered by people like me or by Luis Yanza, my colleague in Ecuador, Humberto Piaguaje, Toribio Guinda, all these wonderful indigenous leaders and rural community leaders who have had the foresight, the courage, the tenacity, the sophistication to hang in there for over a quarter century, bringing a legal case. They don't want us to be successful. And what's happening to me is something, again, I've never seen before. So it's just critical that this not happen again, and that people understand that it goes well beyond Stephen Donziger. It goes to much broader issues about what kind of society we want to live in and about the nature of our democracy. By the way, just to give you an example of something I have to deal with, my ankle bracelet just beeped. It's on my left ankle because the battery is low. So I'm taking this charger off, which, by the way, looks like this. This sort of goes around my ankle. and there's a band, and now I have to hit it. It says battery charge. I just charge it because I hit it, and then the tape goes off. Then I have to put this back into my base. That's what I do every day, a couple of times. I mean, the state is on my body. I mean, I sleep with this thing. I eat with it. I bathe with it. It never comes off.
In addition to all that, I think it also has to do with U.S. corporate power making sure that Latin America knows.
Oh yeah.
No, yeah. You will do what we say, and
And
we've been rolling over for a long time, and you will continue to roll over, and none of this challenging us. That's why they moved it to Ecuador to begin with. They thought that they could handle it if it was there.
And I'll tell you that the role of the U.S. Embassy in Ecuador in terms of siding with Chevron throughout this litigation was shameful, in my opinion. I mean, I'm an American citizen. Other American citizens were down there helping. They never wanted to meet with us, understand how a U.S. corporation went in and destroyed another country's environment and killed people with foreseeably killed people by dumping. And, if U.S. foreign policy is to stand for anything, it's got to stand for democracy and human rights and respect for the rule of law. And when you have private corporations going into other countries, and it's not just Ecuador, it's Nigeria, it's so many countries, okay, and ravaging the environment in the way that Chevron did in Ecuador, you can't gain the respect of the world. You lose influence in the world. And it's, you talk to any Ecuadorian and you mention the word Chevron or Texaco, no respect for U.S. business or U.S. morals. And, look, I wasn't born yesterday. I mean, the United States foreign policy is highly complicated and usually or often is not what it claims to be. I get it. No. I've traveled enough to know that. But still, I mean, this, what's good for Chevron, that is in terms of not paying this judgment, is really bad for the United States, for U.S. citizens. It makes us look terrible. And, I'm proud as an American citizen that I have spent a lot of years in Ecuador trying to right the wrongs of a company from my own country that caused harm to my friends down there. I'm proud of that.
And we're proud of you. And I'm so happy that so many more people know about your case now, know what your case represents, and are behind you, and will continue to be behind you. And no matter what happens on May 10th, we will continue to be behind you. Nobody's going to forget you, Stephen. And I know all of us who are really hearing what's going on here. We're in this for the long haul. We get that this is for our democracy. This is for all of us. I was reading an article the other day talking about how Thurgood Marshall, the late Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, was a human rights lawyer. And they were saying, wow, how far America has sunk, that you can't even imagine a president today from either party appointing a Supreme Court justice who is a human rights lawyer.
Can I just cut? You're so right. When you walk into court today as a lawyer, as a human rights lawyer, in federal court, you can't find a judge who has a background in human rights or even civil rights.
Almost a
judge comes either out of the government or the corporate legal world. Mm-hmm. And it's like you're just fighting this uphill battle. No, you're right. A Thurgood Marshall would never be appointed by a president in either party today, given the way our society is structured. So it's a real problem, Well,
yeah. I think millions of people now, there's been an awakening, and an awakening is going on, and people realize this represents the decline of the United States on a level that is unsustainable. The Dalai Lama himself said to me, the people of the world no longer see the United States as the champion of democracy. When you're talking about Latin America, so many people have read books by people like John Perkins. We get it. People understand, and now we just want to know what we have to do. And what we have to do is keep pushing. There is no one single answer, but everywhere where we can possibly make a difference, we have to. And this case is important, and we have to be there for Stephen. Stephen was there for these 30,000 farmers and indigenous people in Ecuador who were being so deeply harmed by an American oil company. And even though they represented the worst of America, Stephen represents the best of America. That struggle has been with us from our beginning. And now we have to be there for him. And that is why I hope you will go to freedonziger.org. I hope that you will do everything that it asks you to do. We're all going to call the Justice Department. We're going to all make noise and let Merrick Garland know that we know he has a lot on his plate right now, but hey, it's a big job, and there are a lot of hours in the day. And hopefully he will get to this one. And do what you can to help Stephen with his defense expenses at donzigerdefense.com. Get involved, use your platform, use your voice, do what you can, spread the word. Anything else, Stephen, that we can do to support you?
Just thank you. Thank you, Marianne, for your leadership in our society, your positive vision. You're an awesome person. And I watched you from afar before I even got to meet you personally. And I just salute you for having the vision that you do to better our society, and for inviting me on to share my story with your audience. Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to the day, and that day will come when I can meet you in person, meet your wife, meet your son, all go out to dinner, and even post-COVID, even hug each other, and there will be no ankle bracelet. Much love to you, praying for you, thinking of you, sending money, all of the above. And to all of you, I hope that you were as moved by Stephen's story as I am, and as so many people are. But more than that, I hope that you'll do something about it. Much love to all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. God bless. Everybody. Have a